We're heading out on a youth turkey hunt. Now the hunt starts tomorrow. I've got two kids here that have drawn tags. Rylee, this is going to be his first. Aubrey actually drew last year as well. She's got some luck running right now, and she got a Jake last year. Now Rylee, this is his first time. So you should have seen him when he drew the tag. He was jumping and screaming all over. He was so excited. So he's pretty stoked for this. Now we've come out. We've got two blinds actually set up. This is one of them. We've got another one in another spot because obviously it'd be difficult for me to be able to help both of these, and so I've actually invited Jacob Newman, the taxidermist with Frontier Wildlife Studio. You've met him quite a bit. He's a pretty good turkey hunter. He's bagged quite a few himself. So I invited him out. So I'm going to jump in this blind with Rylee, and then I'm going to have him go with Aubrey into the other blind, and we'll see what happens. So anyways, everything's kind of set up. It's starting to get dark. We've heard a few turkeys out there. We're going to go ahead and slip on out of here and come back tomorrow and see what happens. Now it had rained pretty hard up until about an hour before dark when we had headed out to set up our blinds. Apparently the rain shut up the turkeys in the area, so without seeing or hearing anything at first, I was a little nervous. But just before dark, turkeys started gobbling off in the distance, and then a few flew up and roosted near the blinds. In fact, about 10 turkeys roosted right between our two blinds that were probably 200 yards apart, separated by a very thick chunk of brush that was near impossible to walk through for a person, but for the turkeys was one of their favorite places to sneak through. Hopefully in the morning, at least a few of those roosted turkeys would come by one of our blinds. We met Jacob at 5 a.m. the following morning and headed off for the hunting grounds. We had about a 3/4 mile hike to get to our blinds, and we needed to make sure to get there before it got light so we could have time to place our decoys and get all settled in before they could see us. Sure enough, as we got to our blinds, turkeys started gobbling. We hurried and got everything set up in the dark and just in time. As daylight broke, the gobbling only intensified. We knew of the birds that were roosted between us and Jacob and Aubrey, but we were hearing turkeys gobbling south of us, west of us, and east of us. It sounded like there were turkeys all over. Of course, hearing gobblers and getting them to come by your locations are two totally different things. We watched and waited while the turkeys just got more and more worked up. Although they were still in their roost, it was just a matter of time before they came down. I could tell at least a couple of these that we were watching were toms, as you could actually see them gobble. Both Jacob and I made sure to do a handful of calls to help let the roosted turkeys know of our whereabouts in hope that it would pull them our way once they came down. I guess in a way we were kind of competing for the same birds. For me, however, I didn't mind which one of us the birds came down to. I just wanted at least one of the kids to get a shot opportunity. As it happened, a single Jake flew out of its roost right in front of Jacob and Aubrey. The light was still pretty low, and so Jacob had Aubrey hold off. The Jake landed really close to the decoy, looked at it, and found that he didn't like it, and quickly slipped out of the area. A bit later, about a half hour after legal shooting light, the other birds started coming off their roost, and they headed in mine and Rylee's direction. Thinking we still had a few minutes to get set in case some of those turkeys headed to our blind, I was helping Rylee get his gun set in a shooting position down this lane that I was pretty sure they would come down. Suddenly, a turkey appeared about 15 yards from us. However, it had probably seen the tip of the gun barrel outside the blind window as Rylee was getting set, and it ran off the other direction before I could even get the camera on it. Now it was back to a waiting game, combined with some calling to help entice the birds our way. I used a combination of turkey calls just to make sure I sounded like multiple turkeys. I have a box call that works pretty well for hen calls and gobbles, but I prefer it more for the hen calls. I have a slate call that does some really good hen calls, as well as some feeding noises. And every now and then I would throw a gobble out, as gobbles seem to be pretty loud and could get the attention of birds at a longer range. The most important call, however, is the mouth read, as it can be easily used regardless of if a turkey is far off or close by when I need my hands for the camera or a gun. Motion suddenly caught Rylee's eye, however it turned out to be a white-tailed deer. It would look our way when we were turkey calling, but I thought it was interesting how it looked up into the trees as if it was looking for all those loud turkeys. With turkeys gobbling off in the distance in several directions, we still had plenty of time for some to work our way. And sure enough, about 5 minutes later, a gobbler was really getting fired up and coming in behind us. At that point, we had to hurry up and close the windows we were looking out so that we could open up the ones behind us. As I was doing that, I spotted another turkey coming down the way we had initially been looking. A quick look with the binos assured me it was a tom, and I had Rylee get ready. The bad thing was I couldn't seem to get a good angle on the tom with my camera without Rylee getting in the way. It was moving so quickly and came into range at under 30 yards that I thought it might leave pretty quickly as well. So rather than worrying about getting the camera to focus on the bird, I told Rylee just to go ahead and take it as soon as he was ready.
I got it.
That was bad footage, but a great shot.
So he had them roosted and they started to fly down, and one came down this lane right here, and it was like 20-ish yards away, and it got spooked, so we didn't ever know if it was a male or female. And then some turkeys came over here on the left of us, and so we were getting situated here, and then another turkey came down this lane, and I had the perfect shot and took it.
That turkey down right where he'd shot it is proof of a good shot. After another 20 minutes, when it sounded like there were no other turkeys nearby, we slipped out and went over to check out Rylee's trophy. It had a 4 to 5 inch beard, so at first we thought it was at least a couple-year-old tom. But after a quick look at its tail, it was obvious that it was a Jake.
Okay, here's Rylee and his turkey, as you can see. It's a pretty one. It's a Jake, and anyways, has probably about a 4-inch beard, so the biggest beard I've seen on a Jake before. But you know, it was a really fast hunt. The way it turned out, I wasn't able to get the footage of it, but it was pretty exciting for us, and fun to see Rylee get his first turkey. So now we've got Aubrey that's out there with Jacob somewhere, and there's still a lot of activity going on, so hopefully they can find some birds and get some luck themselves. But one down and one more to go here today.
With Aubrey still needing to fill her tag, we quietly slipped back over to our blind where we would just wait and see how it went with her. Over at the blind where Aubrey and Jacob were, they waited another half hour but noticed that all the turkeys had moved away from their location and closer to where Rylee and I were. In fact, while we waited, we watched 2 different groups of turkeys, each with a couple toms, work their way into the brush in front of us and out of sight. We could still hear exactly where they went as they kept up a steady stream of gobbling and hen chirps. With that in mind, Jacob and Aubrey slipped out of their blind and made a slow and careful trip over to near where the turkeys had holed up. They spotted 3 different whitetails as they went, but the whitetails were more interested in those noisy turkeys than anything else. You'll notice that Aubrey's still wearing her black coat and face mask. She didn't realize that the black was just for inside the blind. Outside the blind, the black made her stand out like a sore thumb. Wearing that black coat just made it a lot tougher on them being able to call a tom into range, as they were no longer in the blind. Hunkering down on the opposite side of this wash where they were hearing several gobblers, they tried calling them out. They could tell they were just inside the brush, but eventually all the turkeys went silent for a time. With that, they decided to move on in a little closer. As they did so, they looked back just in time to see several turkeys crossing in the dry wash right where they'd been. Thinking that they had missed their opportunity, they continued on, and then hunkered down again and started calling. Whether it was Jacob's calling or a noisy eagle that flew over, they're not sure, but the turkey suddenly lit up with gobblers going off like crazy. They soon realized 2 toms were fighting in the brush. With the turkeys being so noisy, they would take a few quick steps at a time, stop and watch, and then move in a little more. They could see the toms in the thick brush, but not well enough to film. Getting to a good spot to hunker down again, they set up behind a log, noticing that a couple other turkeys seemed to be paying attention to the turkey fight rather than anything else. At one point, a couple toms in the brush would come to a tree right in front of them and just about clear for a shot, but then would turn back in the brush, and this happened a few times. One thing was for sure, they were right in the thick of a bunch of turkeys. Meanwhile, back in our blind, we were still just hanging tight, listening to all the gobbling going on and wondering what was happening. Suddenly, Aubrey caught some movement out of the corner of her eye, and they got ready for a possible shot. Almost as if she willed it to come into the clear, a tom walked right out at about 25 yards.
Go ahead.
Good shot.
As you now know, Aubrey had a good eye and made a great shot.
Good job. That's a nice one.
We came out at about 5 o'clock. We sat, and we saw them roosted up in the trees, and we waited and waited. And then we heard a gunshot go off. My brother got one. And then we waited for them to come over into our clearing, and they didn't, and they didn't, and they didn't. And so we decided to get up and see if we could sneak into them. And so we walked along the dry bed, and we gobbled back, and we just kind of a hide and seek game that we played, and then we could see them through the bush walking around, and then we saw them fighting with each other, which was really cool to see. And so then we just hunkered down and waited for them to come, and to our right we saw a hen, and so we were being quiet and patient for her to pass by. Then out the corner of my right eye I saw him. He was just standing staring at us, and I was just hoping and praying that he would walk out into the clearing in front of me, and he did, and so I shot him, and he's a gorgeous one. I'm really shaking though. I can feel it.
Once we knew her shot was good, Rylee and I hurried over to meet up with Aubrey and Jake and hear their story.
She did a good job. we were just right over here, and they were all fighting right here, and so then we were hearing them flat.
What a phenomenal morning. All I could be was grateful as we headed off back to our blinds to pack up, with both of my kids packing a tagged out tom over their shoulder. It was indeed a good day in the outdoors. Well, I really hoped that we would be able to get a couple birds down, but I didn't expect to be able to get 2 of them down. So as you can see, just an incredible morning. I got to thank Jacob here. I knew there was no way I could do that myself with both of them. And so I invited Jacob out, and he was more than willing to come out. He's done pretty well in the past himself, and so I know he's got some good calling techniques and skill, especially to sneak in on some birds. But anyways, it worked out fantastic for us this morning, opening morning of this youth hunt, and within a couple hours we've got 2 birds down and 2 tags filled. So just an incredible way to come out here and start and end this hunt for us today.